Cool. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Your Worldviews. Today's guest we have on has conducted thousands of interviews with Israelis and Palestinians, asking the hard questions most of us are afraid to ask. Corey Gil-Shuster runs the Ask Project on YouTube. It's unfiltered, unedited responses from both sides of the conflict. Let's find out what he's learned from that experience. Corey, welcome to Worldviews.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So, Corey, can you first start with telling us about your upbringing? I know you're a Canadian Israeli. You moved to Israel in '93. You're also Jewish and you live in Tel Aviv. So, can you give us a more granular picture of your origin story prior to the Ask Project?
Sure. So I grew up in Ottawa and I went to university in Montreal. I came to Israel the first time. It was in 1989 on a study abroad program. I had really no interest in Israel, even though I grew up in a Jewish family and we learned about Israel. I personally didn't care. And then I came here to Israel and I just found a really interesting place. It's all chaos, insanity, warm people, interesting stories. And it surprised me. It was very different version of Judaism than I had experienced and very different Jews, Middle Eastern Jews, Ethiopian Jews, just different Jews I hadn't grown up with. Um, I ended up meeting the guy who became my husband, who is Israeli. His parents were born in Israel too, and we lived here for many years. I then went back to Canada because of the Second Intifada. There was a lot of violence, and we had just adopted a child. And I went to study conflict studies because I wanted to understand what I had experienced in terms of the conflict. Because it didn't make any sense to me that if we were in, at the time, peace process with the Palestinians, why was there so much violence coming from Palestinians? And so studying conflict studies, conflict resolution, really helped. So then came back to Israel, started the Ask Project because I thought that's my contribution to this whole thing is finding out what regular people think.
Okay. And you've been doing that for over 10 years now, the Ask Project?
14 years. It'll be 14 years. It's 14 years this month. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So what's the process like? How do you come up with the questions? How do you know who to ask on the street corners? I imagine that part's pretty random for the people, but how is the whole process that goes behind the scenes before you really turn on the camera and get after it?
So people have to send me the questions. The first one, by the way, the first question I ever asked was about a one state solution. And it wasn't in the form of a question. Somebody just stated, an outsider, not Israeli, not Palestinian, said, Israelis and Palestinians want a one state solution. And I said, can I ask that as a question? Because I have this idea to ask people on the streets. And he said, fine, do what you want. Once people saw the benefit of asking people, people started sending me questions. So I go to my Gmail where people send me questions, and I get new questions. And I just have this running list of 30, 40 questions. I go to different places all around Israel and the West Bank, Palestinian West Bank and Jewish settler West Bank. And I just ask random people if they're willing to answer a question on YouTube. And that's it. And what I'm looking for are people who are just sort of regular people. Just, I'm trying to keep track in my mind, the ratio of men to women, of different groups, different cities. I'm always trying to keep that in my mind, but really it's completely random who I'm asking. So there's 10 people answer a question. You get a sense of what 10 people from across Israel or across the Palestinian West Bank, what do they think about a specific issue?
Yeah, I really appreciate the fact that your channel doesn't just go political, it goes religious. It goes to all these different sort of areas of Palestinian and Israeli viewpoints. And for example, we talked before this, one of your most viewed videos asks about Jesus. I think another one was asking, which I thought this one was pretty shocking. You were asking Jews if they view non-Jews as equal to them. And I was curious to hear, I guess, what are some unexpected answers or more surprising answers to questions like that you've received that you're just like, I can't believe there are some people that have this mindset towards this particular issue?
Well, on the Israeli side, I know Israelis, so I'm not really that surprised. by, sometimes I'm surprised because I expect a certain answer, and thankfully, they give me whatever the opposite is, right? So I see someone and I sum them up in my mind. Oh, they're very conservative. They're very liberal. They're very religious. They're very whatever. And I expect a certain answer, and then they surprise me. So that's nice because I love to be surprised. With Palestinians, it's more that's more the case. So maybe you're surprised by Israelis. I know who I'm dealing with. I call everyone my people. Like anybody, any group that I have a lot of experience with, I'm like, they're my people. Let's talk. And it's not that I agree with them. It's just I know what they're going to say, what they're going to talk about. Palestinians at the beginning, I really didn't understand. The first video I did of Palestinians was actually meant to be a joke video because I didn't know really what to do with this channel. So the question was, and it's there, it's on the channel, Palestinians, do you want to throw the Jews in the sea? And I thought, no one is going to say yes, because what an absurd, stupid question. It's something that if you know Israeli history or people, the Arabs want to throw the Jews in the sea. But I thought, who's really going to say yes? And the first guy, it's kind of in order of how it happened. The first guy said, no, 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 it's a Zionist conspiracy. The Zionists made this lie up. And I went, oh, I can't make any jokes out of that. So I went to the second guy 2 minutes later, and he said, well, of course I want to throw them in the sea. And I was thinking in my head, no, 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 sweetie, sweetie, no. You don't understand the question. It's because you don't speak English. So I had a friend who was Palestinian who translated the question. He goes, I understood. Of course I have to throw them into the sea. They're my enemy. And I was like, "Oh, this is different than I expected." Because all people, every viewer, you, Devin, um, you expect people to think the way you think. And then when they don't, you're like, "Hold on. Why is that? Why do they have think in a very different way?" And, so it actually made me wanna do this even more because I thought, "Oh, there's this whole other population that I have no idea about." And that was 14 years ago.
Like, when you first started, were you I mean, surely you had to be somewhat nervous because you knew these questions could easily offend people when you ask them, and it's
100%.
not like it's not like you're behind a computer, it's like you're there in person.
No, I'm kind of stupid. It's my joke that, like, I've been threatened to my face, and I just kind of go, "Really? Huh? Okay." And then after, I get mad. No, I get scared, and then I get mad. But after is like 6 hours later. I'm not very bright. I am not good in these situations because people have threatened me in person, and I just kinda go, "Yeah, you could beat me up. I guess that's true. Yeah, you could kill me. Yeah, yeah, that's true." So yeah, I know that I'm pissing people off. I actually have part of me is my sense of humor that I kind of enjoy getting people mad as if they're mad at me. It kind of makes me happy because I like to challenge people's assumptions. I hope it doesn't go. Nobody's actually ever hit me, just so you know. Nobody's actually tried to kill me, but I have been threatened a couple of times by Jews and by Palestinians. And I kind of I don't enjoy that part, but I do enjoy seeing the look on their face when I ask the question and how shocked they are. And I'm trying to ask it the way you would and not knowing. And what I'm happy about, the reason it makes me happy, is that you, Devin, or viewer, whoever, think your question is completely logical. But to the person I'm asking, they might get offended. They might think, how dare you even ask this?" And I think that's important. I think in conflicts, understanding even what you're allowed to ask is interesting and important as to learn about the conflict.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. Before we go forward with I mean, there's so many disagreements, obviously, but what is something that the Israelis and the Palestinians actually agree on that I guess an average viewer would be shocked to hear?
I don't really have they don't agree on much. It's a weird thing that they don't agree if they actually were to first of all, they can't meet is another thing. So Israelis and Palestinians, because of the nature of the conflict and how everybody is now separated, don't often get a chance to meet. So if they could, um, they would notice that, first of all, they look a lot alike, which each side thinks the other looks different, which I think is hilarious. I constantly it's this thing that goes on in my head where I'm in the Palestinian territories and I see someone and I think, wow, I know a guy who looks exactly like this guy. I wish I could ask both of them a question and just put it like just for that visual because they look exactly alike. They don't realize Palestinians think all Jews are from Poland. They're not. Um, the Israelis think all Jews look like they came from Saudi Arabia. They do not. I know lots of blonde Palestinians. Um, they think alike and they mirror each other in a lot of ways in terms of how they speak about the conflict. But what they would agree on, not a lot, because this becomes about identity, and each side's identity feels threatened by the other's identity. So it becomes very complicated. It's very all or nothing. Very few people will agree to compromise in this, especially now when things have gotten much worse. Um, the thing that would shock you come, let's say, to Israel is that within Israel, there are 2 million Palestinians, like Arab Israelis who are Palestinian, and they work with Jewish Israelis, live with Jewish Israelis, interact. So you would probably not notice that you're standing around people who are Palestinian and Jews and Israelis, and one of them might be a right wing Ben Gvir supporter, and the other is a Palestinian who votes for the Muslim Brotherhood, and they might be great friends at work. They just will never talk about the conflict. So they might be friendly and friends to a certain because of work. Um, but they just won't talk about the conflict. They sort of use these empty platitudes with each other. Oh, we just want peace. Oh, we just want, and it's just a way to smooth out because you have to work together and you have to get along. So why cause trouble? What's the point? So I think people, when they come to visit, they don't even realize those dynamics are happening. And when I point them out, usually tourists are very surprised by that this happens all the time.
Wow. D do you have a? Because I imagine you have a good understanding about daily life for Israelis. Do you have a pretty good understanding what daily life looks like for Palestinians as well?
Yes, now after 14 years, of course. Better, not perfect. I still don't understand their culture. My translator or Palestinian friends will kind of test me on this, not purposely. They'll say, "Well, you know what we Palestinians think about whatever," or you know what they'll say to this question. And every time I make a guess, I'm wrong. Every time. They're sort of think the opposite of how I would think as a Canadian. The opposite. And I realized this. Here, I'll give an example. I realized this when I would ask Palestinians, "Do you want peace?" And they would all say, "Of course, I want peace." Um, if we end the occupation, blah blah blah, the occupation, right? And I realized it took me years to figure out. When I ask a Palestinian about peace, he doesn't mean peace with an Israeli. He means peace between Palestinians or peace with the world. And so when I have to be very careful in how I phrase a question and then dig and say, when I say peace, I mean peace with the Israelis. And then suddenly it went from, of course, I believe in peace to, oh, no, 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 I don't want peace with those people. And as a Canadian, I'm floored by this, but now I'm used to it, right? Or the occupation. The occupation to most people, as well as me, meant the 67 borders, meaning the West Bank and Gaza. And to no Palestinian does that mean the occupation. The occupation means Israel exists. So Israel has to be destroyed, period. There's nothing else. So when they talk about the occupation, they mean all of Israel. So it took me years to figure that out. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, there's compromise here. There's room for positivity. And it took me years to figure that out because nobody explains themselves here. And this is probably true in all conflicts that you start to speak in like slogans or in like certain words and they mean one thing to you and you don't realize that they mean something very different to another to someone else far away. So you have to really just keep clarifying, is this what you mean? Is this what you mean? Um, and I still don't think I understand what it feels like to be a Palestinian in the West Bank and day to day. That I understand. I don't understand their culture. I really don't. It's a very different culture.
Wow. Okay. And I think since October 7th, the world got a much better view of the true conflict between the Israelis and Palestinians. And obviously, I imagine your channel changed quite a bit in terms of. I imagine you didn't just go out on October 7th and start to interview people once it happened. I imagine it took
No, I
some.
took a break of a couple of months because I thought people are just going to be horrible. Like they're going to say awful
Mhm.
things. And I don't like to ask during an act of war, unless it's about the act of war, then that's fine. But to ask, would you make peace when people are mourning someone they knew who was killed? It's kind of an unfair thing to do. But at a certain point, yeah, you have to go back to it. So it is what it is. And I think the feelings of October 7th on the Israeli side for sure, less so on the Palestinian side, but on the Israeli side, they're not going to change. Meaning it changed everything. So meaning I think there were a lot of Israelis. The second Intifada, like the 90s, early 2000s, changed a lot of Israelis who believed in peace because it was up to 70% of Israelis who believed in peace with the Palestinians. And then knocked it down to, I think it was like 30% before October 7th. And then it just kept going down. It was like 8%, after. And it still kind of hovers. Would you make a compromise at 20% on both sides? But Palestinians and Israelis both say that now. But Israelis are very, very traumatized by October 7th, very much.
Well, do you remember your first interview after October 7th, which whether it was towards the Palestinians or towards the Israelis?
It was definitely towards the Israelis. It took longer to go to my translators were all too nervous. Although it turned out to be fine and people were actually very happy to answer questions. But it took about 6 months to go back to that. Um, the first interview itself, I remember going to there's a mall, an outdoor mall, about 45 minutes south of Tel Aviv, which is a great place because it has like all levels of society. There's like not not rich people, but middle class, lower class, some Russians, Arabs, Palestinians, like not from the West Bank, from within Israel, different groups, right? So I like to ask there. It's a really good cross section of Israeli society. Um, and I remember asking, and a lot of people were like, "No, they didn't want to be interviewed because they one woman I remember said, "This is the first time in a couple of months that I've been out of my house since October 7th because I feel too guilty to leave my house when people are suffering and people were killed. I won't be I can't be in your video. I just can't. I won't be able to get it together." Um, and because I'm Canadian, I don't feel that same level of connection in a sense here. So that kind of surprised me a bit. The people were just still so raw, months later.
And then do you remember what you asked to the Palestinian side after that?
I definitely asked one about do you want to do another October 7th or what do you think? I forget how I phrased it or how it was phrased. I mean, I don't actually phrase the questions. Um, it was a mix. It was definitely a mix. There were older people. So this is a trend. People who are 45 and over tend to be much more willing to compromise. You can have, you can debate, you can see how deep their anger is, and they're maybe willing to compromise. Younger people were like, "No, of course we want to do another October 7th. Of course we do." Not all, but some. It was definitely there.
Yeah. What do the Palestinians what's like the range of answers you get about Hamas from the Palestinian side? Because I know that's a very polarizing topic, obviously, but what do you hear from them when they.
Most Palestinians like Hamas, and always did. It has nothing to do so they see something very different. Here's another one. This will surprise you. So they don't like how conservative Hamas is, for example. So, for example, they know that in Gaza, pre October 7th, if you had, some kind of haircut, which was not the norm for Palestinian society, you can be beaten in Palestinian society in Gaza. I know people in Gaza, this is true, who were beaten because their hair was a little too not masculine, let's say. Um, so they will say you could speak to someone in Ramallah who's open-minded, and they'll say, "Yeah, they're too conservative for me." And I'll say, "Well, is there anything you like about Hamas?" They go, "Oh, well, we love how they fight. We love that they kill Israelis." And these are intellectuals, by the way. These are the educated Ramallah rich people who, because they believe there shouldn't be an Israel, and Hamas is just one of the mechanisms to do that. So everybody will see something different. And then somebody who's maybe more religious, a little poorer, might see, oh, I respect their religious integrity of Hamas. Yes, they're very, they'll see just different things that what you and I see or what you and I hear about. So they might not agree with them politically or religiously, but they'll see different things. As people told me, there's a video, I think I made it in 2014 or 15. Yeah, asking people, "Do you like Hamas?" And most people answered in this very generic, "Hamas is part of us. They're just part of us." Now, also understand that in the West Bank, Palestinians are not totally free. So, because they live under Fatah, the the Palestinian Authority, which is the enemy, or Hamas is their enemy, they can't say too good of things about Hamas or say they support Hamas openly, but, they do see Hamas as their people. That's part of their people, mostly. I have friends who are very anti-Hamas, who are Palestinian from Gaza, very. So I know it exists. There are people who are against Hamas, but the average person on the street sees it just as another Palestinian group.
And I remember, one comment on your videos, particularly about the do Jews view non-Jews as equal? People were saying how, I mean, people didn't love the answers, obviously, but they said how much more people would lean towards, no, non-Jews are unequal if you turn the camera off and ask them again,
No, no, no,
and how.
absolutely not true. No, not
Oh, you
true.
don't think so?
This is people projecting. This is another thing that drives me
Sure.
nuts. It drives me nuts, and there's nothing I can do about it because no matter what I say, people wanna see what they wanna see. No, absolutely not. I have never heard anybody say something different on camera to off camera. They might On camera makes them nervous in the sense of not that the people are gonna judge them, that they wanna sound intelligent. That's all. That's all it is. So people get nervous about wanting to sound like they're smart. In fact, actually, it's the people with the extreme opinions who get mad at me going, "You're not going to put this in, are you? I know you, you lefties." They always assume I'm not like a left wing activist. You lefties, you're going to keep this out because you don't want to know the truth. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like the crazy right wing people are the ones who are like, get the views. No, no, nobody has ever told me anything off camera that they wouldn't say on camera 100%. This is people who so this is another thing. People project what they think they know about Jews or about Muslims or about Palestinians or Israelis onto my videos that make no sense to me and they don't understand that they're all completely wrong. All you people who keep claiming these things, you're full of crap.
Wow,
It's
that's so
not true.
interesting.
I'll give you an example. I will give you an
Sure.
example. I have been in Israel for 30 years. I was with my husband for 20 years. At one point after, I think it was 17 years, a brother-in-law, so it's kind of a hard, like a and not a direct relation, but someone I had known already for 17 years said something about Hanukkah. You know Hanukkah, the holiday? And he started to explain it to me. And I said, "Yeah, I know what Hanukkah is. I'm Jewish." And he said, "You're Jewish?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "But you come from Canada." And I go, "Yeah." And I go, "They're Jews in Canada." He goes, "There are Jews in Canada. Jews come from Morocco. Jews come from Iraq. Jews come from maybe America, maybe." It's a Middle Eastern attitude. These people are Middle Eastern. They don't understand there are Jews in Canada. He goes, "I thought you were a Christian." And so he, for 17 years, had thought I was a Christian. And I'm just saying, like, and I'm laughing. And like, so we made this joke in the family. They would say, Corey's a Jew. Corey's a Jew. And they're like, "Yeah, we know." Because they just don't know because they grew up in a Middle Eastern reality where Jews are from Morocco and Iraq. Like it made no sense to them. A Jew from Canada, that's insane. So people don't are not judgy in that sense about if you're a Jew or not a Jew. Um, they don't care. They really just don't care. Unless you have to marry someone who's religious, then maybe they care. But even then, I know some mixed couples who are, religious. So
That was an interesting video too, the would you marry someone that wasn't, I don't know, I'm trying to remember if
yeah,
you were
yeah.
asking
Would you
Jews
date
this?
someone? I'm re-asking it. Someone asked me to re-ask it, and I love anything to do with sex. I'll ask about it just because I think they're funny and they lead to funny discussions. So I'll ask about it. I'm starting again to ask.
Good, okay, cool. And what about the casualty numbers in Gaza? When you ask Israelis about that, do they do they know the numbers, or how do they respond directly when you ask them about that usually?
So okay, this is I don't think they know the numbers as in they know 70,000 like an actual number because and it's not well, it's a partial thing. First of all, I don't think they care about what's happening in Gaza. They really don't. They've turned off. They don't care. They see the fault is the Palestinians. Whatever they get is their problem. They brought this on themselves, their problem, which I don't like. I'm a Canadian. I'm a humanist. I know people in Gaza. I do feel bad for some people there for a lot of people who are suffering. Um, and it concerns more so. It concerns me about my people, meaning the Jews of Israel, that we've become so unsympathetic. That concerns me as a Jew and as someone who lives in Israel. The other element of this is that most Israelis, I know no one believes me. Most Israelis are kind of dumb. Sorry, they're just kind of dumb. They don't really know what's going on all the time. They don't actually watch the news. They get all their information from Instagram and TikTok. They're just as dumb as everyone else around the world that they don't actually know what's really going on or, let's say statistics, or they don't even know their own history sometimes. So that's another element. So I asked them, "Do you care about the numbers?" They don't know about the numbers. They also just don't care. The part that concerns me is the fact that, well, I mean, I care for their education. The people should be more educated, partially, but more so the lack of empathy and sympathy scares me. And that's a product of being in a conflict for so long, and that's what happens. Palestinians are the exact same. They know nothing about Israelis. They think they know something about Israelis. They know nothing. I hear stories all the time from Palestinians about Israelis that make absolutely no sense.
I'd be so interested to hear your questions asked to Jews in America and see if there'd be any type of,
Yeah, they're
different.
not gonna know either. They're not gonna know. Because look, I'm a Jew from Canada, right? Before I got that interested in Israel, you think I knew the history? Do you think I knew statistics and data? I had to learn it because I became super interested in it. I have nephews, sister, cousins who are constantly calling me going, "Okay, what's really going on? Wait, what?" And I'll tell them basic facts about things, and they'll go, "Really? Really? That's a thing?" Because they don't know either, and it's not because they're dumb. They're not. I mean, I say these things sort of like meanly, but it just people have other things to do in life, right? This is not their
Mm,
obsession. I'm a weirdo nerd who's obsessed with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, so I tend to remember these things. Most people don't. They know I'm a Jew. I'm supposed to side with Israel. That's what we do. If you're, by the way, if you're an Arab or a Muslim in America or Canada, you're going to feel pretty much the same. And they don't really know all that much.
mm. And when you ask Palestinians what would make them feel safe and free, not about politics, but just about their lives, what do they usually say about that?
Well, the idea of the occupation would make them feel more, meaning if it went away,
Yeah.
would make them feel more free. And by the occupation, I don't mean the settlers in the West Bank. There's this weird obsession, and I'm actually anti-settlement, by the way. I'm a big lefty liberal who I don't think settlements are a good idea. I'm old school, fine. Um, this idea that if you remove all the settlements, it's going to make peace is not really the issue. It's going to help. It'll help a bit, but it's not the huge issue. The bigger thing is them not feeling safe because Israelis have control over their lives. The idea, it's psychological idea more than something practical. Now, of course, there are settlers and soldiers who are making some Palestinians' lives very difficult. Now, if you're a Palestinian, 95% of Palestinians live in urban areas. So if you are that Palestinian who lives inside Bethlehem, in Ramallah, in Nablus, whatever, you don't interact with settlers, you don't interact with soldiers, you don't meet them. Like I ask Palestinians in earlier videos, have you ever met an Israeli? And I'll say, and they'll say yes. And I'll say, where? They go, the soldier at a checkpoint. And I'm like, well, that was a person far off. You didn't even exchange words with them. That's not you didn't meet them. So most Palestinians don't actually interact with Israelis all that often. There are 5% of West Bank Palestinians who live in Israeli areas in the West Bank. And that 60% of the West Bank that's all controlled by Israel. Once you pass from the Israeli controlled part to the Palestinian controlled part, you don't see Israelis or hardly ever. Sometimes the army will come into raid, usually at night, but you don't really see them, you don't interact with them. It is scary. I don't wanna, I'm not gonna say it's not scary. I'm just saying you could easily live in a West Bank Palestinian city and not interact with any Israelis in any way.
Wow, that's so fascinating. For the more extremist answers that you received, what percentage of the population on both sides do you think that actually represents them?
Define the extremist. What do you define as extremist? It's a it's
Yeah,
a it's a it's a
I guess
range.
that's true. That's a good
So
question too. For example, I guess going back to Hamas supporting killing Israelis, would that be like majority of Palestinians believing that?
well, according to Khalid Shakaki, who does a survey with the PCPSR, oh, I think I got it right this time, Palestinian something something Research Institute. He's a Palestinian. It's 63% of Palestinians believe that using violence is legitimate to with Israelis. 63%. Um, I would say from my interactions, because some of his statistics that I've read don't necessarily make a lot of sense, because there's 40% who apparently sometimes will agree to a two-state solution. But everyone I meet under 40 is against almost, I shouldn't say everybody, almost everybody, like 95% is against having any peace agreement with Palestinians who are younger. Older people tend to be more open to compromise. Maybe it's because they have children. Maybe it's
Mm,
because they're older and tired. I don't know. Um, so in terms of how often am I going to hear from people, we need to kill Israelis? I'd say like 20% of the time. Then the opposite is 20, 15. I'll give, generously up to 20% of on the other side of I'm willing to compromise with Israel because it gives me something, right? Meaning economically,
mm.
or I'm tired of this war, that kind of thing. That's what the two groups I kind of meet. And then everyone else is in the middle seeing who's going to win. That's kind of my what I feel is happening. This is completely subjective. It's not objective. I don't know. This is what I feel is happening when I meet people.
Yeah, because based on the under 40, older 40, am I reading this right? Does the next generation seem more hopeful or extreme?
No, more extreme.
More extreme.
Well, more hopeful in
Yeah.
the sense that violence will kill the Israelis and they'll all leave and go back to Poland. That's how they see it. They want all the Israelis to go to Poland. That's just what they say, even though most Israelis are actually from Middle Eastern countries. Fine. Um, the young people, and it's because they're young and hot headed. I don't know. They're much more extreme.
Yeah. And how about for you though, individually? I mean, you've done this for so long. You've heard all these answers. And I think I heard in an interview yours, you don't seem to be or optimistic about the future here.
I don't know. Not at all. No. It's gonna continue the way it is. It's really sad. They need, both sides need I'm quoting someone else, not my idea. We had a professor, I work at Tel Aviv University. He negotiated with Palestinians. He's not a professor, sorry, he's a lawyer. He negotiated with Palestinians, and his thing is you need a strong leader who's gonna drag everyone with them. So in 1977, Anwar Sadat in Egypt changed his mind about the conflict and said, "Peace is better than war." And he dragged the Israelis into it. They didn't want to make peace with Egypt because they didn't believe it was real, not because they don't want peace, but the Israelis thought for sure this is a trick. You can't trust this person. Now we have an agreement with Egypt for 50 years. Um, Palestinians are harder because we're so integrated. So there's so many places of conflict that can happen to blow up. But you need a leader, and they don't have one, and we don't have one, who will drag people into a better reality, which doesn't include violence and somehow includes the other in some way. So I'm not optimistic because I don't see anyone on the horizon who is that person. And I don't know if even if there was that person, by the way, Anwar Sadat was killed for it. So he was murdered because his people thought what he did was traitorous. And that is still the attitude of most Arab Muslims. It is traitorous to deal with the Israelis. So Palestinians included, 100%. It is traitorous. The reason I don't say the names of my translators is because they are considered traitors, that they're even speaking to me.
That is so crazy. Jeez, okay.
The fact that I have so this is here. Oh, here's another one that'll surprise you. A Palestinian living in Ramallah, wherever, Nablus, it's okay for them, and not now since the war, but whatever, um, to come into Israel to work and get paid a decent wage. They get paid what an Israeli gets paid in construction, which is, by the way, the same I get paid at Tel Aviv University, just so you know. They actually make a little bit more money than me. That is considered acceptable. It is, even though it is, um, you would think Palestinian coming into Israel to work is considered, wait, what a second? You're going to build homes for the enemy? But it's considered acceptable. But if the same Palestinian were to be my translator, that is considered traitorous to the point where they might be jailed by their government. They might be killed by family members. They might be killed by neighbors because it's treason to deal with your enemy in a way that is seen as helping the enemy, even though it's not. It's just translation. I'm giving it
Yeah,
just an example.
it's just yeah. Well, oh, and sorry,
So I'm
what
just saying,
class
and
of
it's not everybody. I know it's not everybody, but it's to the point where, find me a Palestinian organization which openly works with Israelis that is open about it. There are lots of them, but none of them are open about it because it's considered treasonous. Because
jeez,
even the current Palestinian Authority um, will not protect them.
that's so interesting. I
It's a
recently
cultural thing on their side more. Look, on our side, we also have it, by the way. Every time I ask my ridiculous, obnoxious questions, do you want to make peace with Palestinians? I get yelled at by people all the time. I had a woman who said, my brother was killed by a Palestinian. How dare you come and ask me about peace? You traitor. She yelled at me. Now, they're not going to kill me. Israelis are not going to kill me. Um, but there's still those ideas of the fact that I'm asking these questions in public is to some people, how can you do this?
yeah,
Not
what's the most
everybody,
you
but
yeah,
go ahead.
what's the most you've actually feared for your life in these situations?
Okay, so the best one was I was
The
in
best one.
Ramat Beit Shemesh, which is an ultra Orthodox Jewish area. So the guys with the hats and the payas, the curls, and there is a rumor that I am a Jews for Jesus. I am a Messianic Jew, and in their society. So I'm interviewing them. We're having a great time, and I'm schmoozing, and we're talking, and whatever. And this nutcase, 40-year-old, runs out of his apartment screaming, "He's a Messianic Jew!" He's like Jews for Jesus, Messianic Jew, Messianic. They all turned on me, and they said, "If you don't leave, we're going to kill you." And they all surrounded me like they were going to beat the crap out of me. Now they didn't touch me, but everybody there went, "Well, Messianic Jew."
They were gonna kill you for that
And it was
actually.
an extreme neighborhood. It's true. It's an extreme. I told a friend of mine who lives in the same city, and she goes, "Well, of course, you were in that neighborhood. I don't go to that neighborhood. They're crazy there." And she's an Orthodox woman. So she's like, "Yeah, you were in the wrong neighborhood. They're just like this weird cult that has decided whatever. They decide their own little things." So I keep getting in trouble because they think I'm a Messianic Jew. Now, wait, for the record, I'm a Jew. I'm an atheist Jew. I don't believe in my own religion. I just respect that people have the right to believe whatever they want. I don't actually care. But yeah, that was probably the scariest one. And I was with a friend who is religious. He didn't look religious, but he's from Canada, and I felt really bad for him because he was like, "What the hell is going on here?" I mean, I'm used to the crazies. So he was the first time he ever had filmed with me, so I felt really bad.
But that, I guess that death to the Messianic Jew doesn't actually represent, uh, a significant population mindset of Israelis, right?
No, not at all. I mean,
Okay,
look,
cool.
60% of Israelis are secular, traditional, up to 80%. Only 13% are actually Orthodox, like ultra Orthodox. And then there's modern Orthodox. So even a modern Orthodox or even ultra Orthodox, they're not going to care that much. They're just going to be like, that's really sad. It's like, I'm assuming most Christians, the fact that I don't believe Jesus is the Messiah, they're going to think, well, that's really too bad. Oh my God, I can't believe you don't believe that. Like, that's how most religious Jews see things. It's the same idea. There are some people who live in this paranoid state where they think that Christians are trying to convert Jews, and they think Arab Muslims are trying to steal Jewish women, and so they rile things up. It's like it becomes like just part of their identity. How often does this actually happen? Look, I live in central Tel Aviv. We have what are they called? Jehovah's Witnesses on the corner every day. I've seen them for 10 years. I've never seen an Israeli speaking to them. No offense to the Jehovah's Witnesses. I have friends who are from, they left Jehovah's Witnesses, but nobody's ever talking to them. Do I care that they're proselytizing? No, couldn't care less. Does anyone care? No, nobody cares. So, yes, there are going to be some people who take it as offensive. They're offended by it. So,
Yeah. What'd you say the classes were that you taught at the university?
I don't teach. I run a conflict resolution master's program.
Okay, right, master's program. Okay, interesting.
So
And
if anyone is interested in learning conflict resolution in Israel, it's super fascinating, really is. Um, yeah, contact me.
yeah,
We
do
have a lot of
students come
Christians, by the way, who come
really?
to our program a lot.
Do the, people in the program ever try to debate you on these topics?
Beat me.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, yes. Oh, yeah. So a lot of people make assumptions about my views, because of the questions that I ask. So I remember I had a German student years and years ago, and because in Germany you're taught you can't be nationalistic. It's just because of the Holocaust, and you're just told not to be a proud German in that sense. So he saw me as this, big Zionist, a pro-Israel person, and I just kind of nod a lot. And I'm like, look, I'm a Zionist to anti-Zionist because I think they're ridiculous. But to people who were like telling me that, like, I get from a lot of people here that I'm a traitor because I even ask these questions. Yeah, yeah, sometimes I get that. I don't really care. Only there's certain what I care more about is that I challenge anybody's assumptions, and I kind of give them some information on a personal level that will make them think in some way. Because everyone gets very used to how they think, and they think that they have all the answers, and I don't think any of us have the answers. And I kind of want people to at least be open to that. That's what I care about. So when people make these assumptions about me, I don't, that's okay.
Yeah, have you ever asked a question in an interview standpoint, and you actually changed your mind on that topic afterwards?
The topic itself? Yeah, yeah, I would say. You know what? Actually, sometimes some look there. I interview most Israelis. I kind of consider myself sort of left leaning ish. Um, and I will talk to a lot of right-wing Israelis, and if they make a good, because most Israelis are right-wing, I'm kind of right. By the way, left and right here mean it's similar to the U.S., but it's more about what do we do about peace and Palestinians. So right-wing people tend to be socially liberal, very, very liberal, but much harder on Palestinians. They have to prove to us that they want peace. They have to make the first move. Whereas the left wing person says, "Oh, I think Israel's to blame for part of this as well." Um, So there have been a lot of people on the right who have convinced me if they make a good argument, um, I see what they're saying. It's not that I'm completely convinced. I still, for example, believe I'm one of the few people who believe a two-state solution is the better of all the bad solutions because it gives everyone a little bit of what they want, but not everything. It's the solution that everyone's talked about for over 100 years. You know what to expect. And I think that's important in conflict situations. Most people are against it, but they make good arguments against it that I go, yeah, you're right. I see what you're saying, 100%. And they'll say, but you still believe in it. And I'm like, kinda, yeah. Like I know if there's a Palestinian state in Gaza and the West Bank, we're going to get rockets launched at us from the West Bank, 100%. For sure, it's going to happen. Um, I don't know what else to do because the other ideas, one state, binational state, all of them have even more problems that will cause more violence. So So yes, people give me arguments I don't agree with, and every so often I go, "Yeah, I see what you're saying, 100%."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because I was gonna ask, is it often where you ask a question, they answer it, and they say, "Okay, I wanna ask you the same question."
yeah, they do that, but I won't give my opinion in the context of the video
Sure.
itself.
Yeah.
After I have conversations, and sometimes I film it and I give it to, patrons, who support the channel as behind the scenes because I don't care. People can know my views. I don't care about that. But the videos aren't supposed to be about me. They're supposed to be about the people. And so but usually they're doing that as a rhetorical device, right? They're saying, "Yeah, what do you think?" Because they're mad at me. They think I'm challenging them in a way and they're right and I'm wrong, and they're gonna prove how they're right and I'm wrong.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes I even agree with them after. I go, "Yeah, I see what you're saying."
Has have you experienced it where you asked a question and talked to them about it, and they changed their mind on camera?
On camera, not exactly. Well, okay, so when you do see little cracks, let's say, let's put it that way, where if you keep pushing and people go, okay, maybe. Now it could be they just kind of want to get out of it, but no one who really believes in whatever they're arguing will say maybe if they don't, if they believe in something so wholeheartedly, right? And all I'm really looking for is how how deep is this belief? So every so often I'll get I think about it with Palestinians more, where they'll say, "No, no, 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 only we can have a state. Israel Jews can't have a state." And I'll say, "Yeah, but what if the Jews really promise they're not gonna attack you, they're not gonna hurt you?" And then if I get a maybe, then I know there's kind of a little bit of room to maneuver. Like it shows some hope that maybe there could be something in the future. Um, I think though, because it's on camera, people are less because of their ego, are less likely to do that. I have heard after that r people told me, because they knew people I interviewed, that I had changed their mind. I'm not so sure if this is true. Um, I don't know, because sometimes people tell you things that they want you to think, and it's not exactly true. I remember I asked, in, East Jerusalem, "What do you think of atheists?" And this woman said, "Oh, atheists are awful. What if your sister was an atheist? Oh, I would never speak to her again." And supposedly she told someone I know, because we happen to know the same person, which I did not realize at the time, that she thought about it and she thinks, "You know what? Maybe I would accept someone who was an atheist." Now, the person who told me this is somebody who's from Europe. So maybe that person was just saying it to, play nice, because in Palestinian society, the worst thing to be is an atheist. The worst thing. Yeah, I'm
I
trying to
know
think of
that.
something worse. And they hate Jews, but atheists are even worse because at least Jews believe in something.
Whoa, okay, that's interesting. I had
This is
no
something I
idea.
keep being told by Palestinians. These are not my words. I've been
Sure.
told this all the time by Palestinians. I'm just repeating what I've been told.
Yeah, yeah. Have you filmed something before that you actually considered not posting?
No,
Never.
no, no.
Cool.
I mean, I knew I'll get in trouble.
Yeah, of
I knew
course.
someone's going to be mad at me. Um, Yeah, no, sometimes people will say things like even I think the worst one I can think of right now is the whole, spitting on Christians thing. So I was asking religious people, "Would you spit on a Christian?" And most religious people hadn't even heard of this because it's something talked about outside of Israel, not in Israel. And then so a friend of mine said, "Oh, I'm taking you to the lion's den." He took me to this yeshiva, this place where, Jewish kids, 20-year-olds study Torah because those are the people who actually spit on people. So I'm like, "Great, let's try it." Because 'cause I'll go, I'll ask I'm not gonna ask only them, but I'll ask at least one of them, and they said horrible things, horrible things. It's in the video. Not only do they need to spit on, Christians as a symbol of having false gods, because to them, having a trinity as a false god,
Yeah.
is idolatry, um, we need to kill the Christians. And I'm like, "Kill?" Like, that I had never heard in my life. And I've lived here for 30 years, 20 something years, 30 years. Never heard this. And I'm like, "You're gonna go kill someone?" They're like, "Well, not me, but, like, once we have the Messiah comes and we have the Sanhedrin again, and we go back to biblical, the temple, the 3rd temple, then, yeah, somebody who is an idolater has to be killed. It says so in the Torah." And for 2 things. First of all, what people don't see is I stopped the camera and I said, "You're the reason," I point to the guy who said this, "You're the reason I don't wanna be a Jew. You're the reason," which is not exactly true. I actually love being a Jew. I think we're a lot of fun, but that was I wanted to make him feel like shit. Um and I was like, "You're disgusting, you are barbarians, I cannot believe," and then I, like, kinda ran away. But I of course, I thought, "This is gonna" 'cause I thought they were gonna kill well, they weren't gonna hurt me, but I thought actually worse, that they would say, "Don't put it in." And I was like, "I think this is important," because my whole thing is, of course, I don't want my people or any people being racist against them. Like you said, people are making these assumptions. They're just not saying the truth. Really, behind this is all this evil ideas. It's nonsense. Hmm. I have the opposite of I want to name and shame these people. I actually thought of putting where their school was, but then I thought if somebody went there and committed violence, I would feel really bad. I couldn't do that. I want to shame them. I don't want to kill them. So yeah, of course, part of me, I got no I had somebody who called me at my work. I don't even know how he found my number and said, "You have to take it down. It's making Jews look bad." And I said, "Don't tell me. Go tell those kids and their rabbi who's teaching violent, horrible, racist things. Tell them. Don't tell me."
Interesting.
And I
Okay.
said that to all people, by the way, to the Palestinians who say horrible things, to the Jews who say horrible things, Christians who say horrible things. If somebody's saying something horrible, blame them. Don't blame everyone else.
Yeah. Mm. I recently had an Israeli woman on. She's out of Tel Aviv, and
Mhm.
I asked her how she feels about the things currently, and she said she feels optimistic and can finally relax. And then you've had obviously thousands of interviews. Is this a unique opinion, you think? The optimism and can finally relax sentiment?
I'm not sure what she meant in that what sense, meaning she thinks the army is doing the right thing and they're really gonna win in Iran. Is that what she meant, you think?
I maybe I I was I should have pressed her more on it, but I assume that's maybe what she meant.
Well, okay, so I have this whole thing. Okay, like I'm an old curmudgeon, like I am a grumpy old man. And so I'm always seeing cynical things. So there's another aspect of Israeli society that nobody really sees, unless you're here, is that Israelis are obnoxiously positive, obnoxiously positive. So you ask any Israeli, from 1 to 10, how happy are you? They're all going to say 10, as if it's a competition. Oh, I'm the happiest I've ever been. Now nobody's that happy. Now they are, and in some ways, because I'm like the opposite. In some ways, it is probably a better way to live because you are naive and walk around thinking everything's going to be wonderful. But I don't know. The same. To me, it just I call it the cult of optimism. They think everything is wonderful, and I think things are. I don't think they're falling apart, but I think we live in the developing world. Israel is not that advanced. Israel is way poorer than most other countries. Everything is falling apart. I have a joke at work where I have a coworker, and I walk into her office and I say, "How does this country exist? How does anything in this country exist? Because nothing works. Everyone is incompetent. Nobody knows what they're doing, but everyone is optimistic, always optimistic." And so I've convinced her. She's like, "You're right. I never thought of it that way." She goes, "I'm just so used to it. I never thought of it. You're right. Nothing works here." So now we have a joke about how does this country exist? That's like our thing. Um, I think it's take a step back. This is what I do. Is I think it's a coping mechanism. We're in Israel is in a difficult situation. You constantly have wars. You have people all around you who want to kill you. They really do want to kill us. You just have to find the positive things and enjoy, what you have. It is not. It is a society that I think, and this is a positive thing, that is much more concerned about experiences and living a good life than it is about material things. You can't really see in my apartment, but I have nothing on the walls. Most Israelis don't have anything on their walls. They have crappy furniture. I live in a one room, tiny. I mean, because I live in Tel Aviv. That's another thing. But people live in small apartments. It's not. I kind of miss living in North America, where you have this either house or a big apartment, and you have a car. I don't have a car. Um, so you just live with less and you spend your money on experiences. You go to Paris, you go to Istanbul, you go to, well, maybe not now. You go to the Seychelles, things like that. You have experiences. So part of it, I kind of, as much as I complain about them, and I call them, too optimistic, they also have, I think, compared to how I lived in Canada, a better way of living in some ways. But I'm not optimistic when it comes to peace. That I'm reserving that because I think this is what I work in, this is what I do, is somebody needs to be the adult to be like, "Hold on. Hold on. The things are falling apart here." Like, this is, and they've always been falling apart, so it's not like it's anything new. Someone needs to point this out. And as a friend of mine says, I like to point out the elephant in the room. So I'm always pointing this out to people going, "Hold on. You think this is great? Are you crazy?" Um, so I don't know. I'm sort of, I both appreciate people like that who can live in this optimism. Think, yes, in Iran, we're going to topple this government. We're going to destroy their nuclear capabilities and all ballistic missiles, because that's what I want, actually. Um, I don't know if it's possible. I have no idea. Really, I don't know.
Yeah, it's yeah, because she also even said that, Palestinians are screwed up by their environment, and as Israelis don't have the means to fix what they're suffering from. And when you ask
Yeah, no, look, I actually understand what she's talking about. There is an Islamic Arab Palestinian culture, which is very different from Israeli culture, that we can't do anything about. It's their culture. Um, I would want to change it personally, because I think there's a lot of screwed up things in that culture. There's also a lot of screwed up things in this culture too, which I'm constantly pointing out to Israelis all the time. But their culture is like a lot more extreme. Way women are treated, the way in the family you're treated, um, relations between people. There's also a lot of pluses. Like, there's a lot of things you see on the surface of hospitality and being kind to each other on the street, of which is very nice. And I think we could learn from it. I think even Israelis, because most Israelis are of Middle Eastern heritage, they've kind of lost that. It's become a little bit more individualistic on the Jewish side. But behind that, I would claim that it's fear based, it's violence based, meaning you're nice to your neighbors because your neighbors can try to kill you if you're not too nice to them. Your father, if you don't bring him his coffee when he wants it, will hit you. And I'm not talking about a 12-year-old girl. I'm talking about a 40-year-old woman. Um, it's a different culture with different rules. That all the rules aren't necessarily talked about all the time, but they're there. And I notice them because I'm Canadian. Um, I'm not sure. I wouldn't want to live in that reality. And so, yeah, they have to figure that. Now, there are people, as we become more exposed to the internet and movies. Of course, things change from generation to generation, but they're still there. Like a lot of those concepts are still there in Palestinian society. Well, I remember asking a woman 10 years ago, but still the same today. As a woman, what's different? And she's like, I can't see my friend across the street and go, hey, it's considered so unladylike that if my father found out, he wouldn't let me out of the house or he might beat me. It's just there are social norms which are enforced by threats and violence. And on the Israeli side, we don't have that. There are social norms, 100%, that are enforced by guilt. And I don't mean Jewish guilt, I mean guilt of you're a traitor, of you're against us, but it's not with violence. There is some, I shouldn't say that. There are some communities where it is with violence. So, like I pointed out, the ultra Orthodox who are against the Messianic Jews. Of course, there are. They exist. Um, but it's not, I understand what she's saying. Now, as a Canadian, I also look at Israelis, I would look at her and say, yeah, you have some of the same features. But she doesn't see that because when you're in your own fishbowl, whatever the water around you, you don't notice it. You don't notice your own culture. So I'm noticing this because I grew up in Canada.
Do you think you'll do this YouTube channel for the extended future for, like, the next 20, 30 years? Is this something you wanna do forever? Because I don't because I imagine you're gonna have plenty of content to do it forever because if this doesn't look like it's gonna.
Well, somebody asked me, I remember somebody asking me after the second year, how much longer are you going to do this? And also, I said, I'll do this until it stops being fun. It's still fun. I have a great time doing this. I really do. I feel like this is kind of my contribution to understanding this conflict. And I have a great time doing it. And I would say to you, come visit, or anyone who's watching, contact me. It is great fun. Going out and just asking random people questions and then after having conversations with people, and you learn all kinds of crazy facts about their background or something that happened, it's a lot of fun. So yeah, I'll do this until, I can't.
Cool. Okay, we have 2 more questions. These are questions we always ask our guests on the show, so they're always similar. Have you ever experienced a paranormal or supernatural experience?
No, I wish I had. Because I don't believe in God, I don't believe in ghosts, I don't believe in any of this stuff, but I really want, not that I want to believe, I want it to happen. Because it would show me there's something else. If I see a ghost, if something I could prove real paranormal, I don't just mean like I've had a lot of coincidences in my life. Absolutely. But nothing, and a friend of mine who's religious would say, aha, see, it's God telling, whatever. No, that I don't believe. But if I could prove there is something else after this, I wouldn't be afraid of death. So I would love to have that. I've just never actually had it.
Yeah, were you always atheist
Yeah, 100%.
since you were a child?
Well, I mean, you're 8 years old, you're not thinking, "Does God exist, not exist?" I just remember after my bar mitzvah, you're supposed to fast for Yom Kippur for the first time, and I remember doing it and then breaking at about 5 o'clock, like, in the afternoon, and eating a candy bar and thinking, "Oh my god, what's gonna happen?" Nothing happened, and I was just, like, thinking, "Wait a second, did I really expect something to happen? Like, that's weird. Why did I do that?" And I think I try everything. For example, I tried fasting. I tried putting on tefillin. I don't know if you know what tefillin is, like the things religious Jews put on. It's like a symbol every day. Jews have been doing it for 3,000 years. This idea of, thanking God, seeing God as above you and all these things. So I've tried all these things and I just feel like, no, it doesn't do anything for me. I have no spiritual side to me. I'm kind of just missing that gene, apparently. I've never had it for anything.
Yeah, and you said you would prefer if there was an afterlife. Does that mean you would
Oh,
prefer if there was a God?
100%. Yes. Well, I would have questions. I would say, "Okay, then why do bad things happen? Sorry. How can you allow, children with leukemia to exist? Why are there wars going on?" And then, everyone has an explanation. I know it's not that you don't have to send me the explanation. I know I've heard all the explanations. I would be angry. I would say, "God, we gotta talk. This is terrible. Children suffering with cancer? That's awful. Children shouldn't suffer. There shouldn't be people in India dying on the streets. And there are, because I've had Indian students who tell me, you just see people dead on the street in places. That's awful. So I have to question why that exists.
And if that conversation goes well, you'd be cool.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, I said if that conversation went well, you'd be like, "Okay, I can accept you, God."
Well, yeah, but then I would also think, really, this whole thing is I have to praise you? Like, really? That's what this is all about? Like, it makes no sense to me. I'm not gonna like, you're not gonna see me suddenly praying every day. That makes no sense to me. It does make sense in the reason I love being a Jew is I think we have a really interesting history. So I'm very interested in my history of what it was like to be a Jew 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, that kind of thing. Because I'm a full Jew, 100. I did a genetic test, 100% full Jew. So I think it's interesting, but it's not going to convince me to suddenly start praying or go to synagogue or doing any or keeping kosher, because that doesn't make any sense to me. Being a good person, that makes sense to me. Doing unto others as you want done to you, that makes sense to me. Because we all live together, we might as well. Why not? Because the opposite is worse. Um, I would hope that if there is a God, that is what God wants. And all the prayer stuff and all that stuff is just to remind you of the being good to each other.
Mm,
That's
mhm.
what I would hope.
Well, okay. Because I was gonna ask you, because on top of that, the last question would have been one question you would ask God, and I imagine the question would have been, "Why is there suffering?"
Yeah, and I mean suffering. I don't mean just like, oh, oh, somebody broke up with me. Oh, he doesn't like me. Not that kind of suffering. I mean like children dying of diseases. Why? Children, come on, that's awful. Older people, most of us are complete asses. So, I mean, I don't want them to suffer either, but I get it. Children are innocent. Like that's no, that's awful. Um, yeah, that would be my question.
Well, Corey, thank you
And I'd
so
want to
much.
argue. I love arguing.
Gonna have the camera on God. Got questions.
Yeah.
Well, Corey, thank you so much. This was so much fun. Is there any last
You're very welcome.
words, pieces of advice, wisdom for the audience? Maybe you can leave them with if there's one thing you can take away from Israelis and Palestinian interactions or conflict, this is it.
Well, first of all, stop making assumptions, because everyone makes assumptions based on what they think they know, and you don't know. Because I can tell by the type of questions I get. I still get people have been watching for 14 years, still ask me questions that don't make any sense here. Come here, speak to people, and have an open mind. Speak to both sides. And actually, I always say this: whoever side you agree with more, go to the other side and argue with them. First of all, listen, but feel free to argue. I think it's fine to argue with anybody. But listen to them. Listen to what they say.
Mm,
So, yeah, I invite you all to come here. Yes, even during the war.
cool.
It's
Well,
not that
Corey,
dangerous.
thank you so much for this time.
You're very welcome. It's great being on your show.
Free audio post production by alphonic.com.